physical or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another exciting and educating edition of the Health and Fitness Show. I'm your host Fahad Matin for today's show, and I hope and pray that all of us are fit and healthy by the grace of Almighty Allah. This program is broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on 24th of November 2022. And casting its positive vibes to all our lovely people in Luton and all the surrounding areas of Luton, like Dunstable, Harpenden, Bedford. You can listen us using Inspire FM app, or you can also listen to us by Inspire FM website, radio definitely, and you can view us using our Facebook live link and YouTube live link. As we all know, we cover different health-related topic every single week. So today's topic is again in the same line of information. So as we all know, Luton has an aging population. Yes, it is an aging population. And according to MHA, there are over 15.5 million people aged 60 and over. That make up 23% of the UK population. Just in Luton alone, we have more than 36,000 people living at the age of 60 plus, and making, if we say percentage wise, it makes up to 16% plus minus, according to the 2021 Luton census. Yes, I think so. You as a listeners may have an understanding what we will be talking today. Yes, we will be talking about care of elderly. Yes, you have heard me correctly. The topic for today is the care of elderly, and definitely I'm not the one who will be talking about tonight. I have a very, 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 very nice and lovely guest working with me today in the studio, and they are colleague. They're my doctors, and they are none other than from in the studio from L&D. We have Dr. Peter Albert, and he's the lead consultant for acute medicine and a specialist consultant for geriatric medicine. And also we have our own Luton local GP, Dr. Talib Abubacker, and he's the lead GP partner at Bell House Medical Center. Good evening, sirs.
Good evening.
Evening.
Assalamu alaikum. Salam. How are you guys?
Very good, thank you.
Very good, thanks.
And thank you so much, Peter, for coming today. It's your very first show, and Talib, as always, you are our resident GP, and definitely your contribution is always very much needed every single time.
Thank you for asking me.
So, as per our tradition, I always ask my guest to introduce themselves. So, let's do a quick round of introduction. Please tell us about yourself and the areas of your expertise. Let's start with you, Peter.
Hello, my name's Peter Albert. I'm a consultant in acute medicine at Luton and Dunstable Hospital, and I'm the clinical lead for acute medicine. And I'm a geriatrician by training, and my background has always been in care of the elderly, and because care of the elderly tends to be quite a general speciality, it lends itself very well to acute medicine, which is seeing undifferentiated patients at the front door.
Indeed. And yes, I know you are one of the best consultants I've worked with. I have a pleasure of working alongside, and definitely our very own Dr. Talib Abubacker. Please give a quick round of introduction about yourself as well.
I'm Dr. Talib Abubacker. I work at Bell House Medical Center in Luton. I've been there 27 years now. Work as a local GP, get involved with lots of community things. There's amazing things happening in Luton, so keep joining in.
And I must say, if you haven't seen him, he's the guy who normally run marathons and who run around in Luton and in London and different marathons across UK as well, and not just Luton and London. You have run other marathons as well, isn't it?
Well, I'm not sure running is the operative word, but I've completed quite a few. But with the Luton Lions and Revolutions, we did London. I've done that twice. Unfortunately, I was injured this year, so I've postponed to April. But I've done Berlin, Amsterdam, Paris, Stockholm, to name a few.
It's not just UK, it's the international ones as well.
I take a good picture at the start, not so much at the end.
And you do a running club as well with...
Well, I'm part of Luton Lions, who started off with 4 guys doing the London Marathon in 2019. And now it's grown to many, many numbers. And out of that, also Revolutions have done lots of things for health and well-being in Luton in terms of exercise. And both groups came together at the Love Luton run. I think both had over 500, 200, about 700, nearly 800 people there.
Yeah, exactly.
Running 5K, 10K, half marathon. So it was fantastic to see Luton getting together, helping each other.
And I must say, I always admire your activities and expertise in those areas, because I have tried my level best to start running. And as you both know, I'm not a very good physically active person in many different ways, shape, or form. Although I've did try to run, but it's not possible. I do run away. But yeah, it is what it is. But
I think that's a theme that we ought to start on, really, from the point of view of staying healthy as people get older.
Exactly. And care of elderly comes in the same lines, because if we do not look after ourselves, we cannot live longer. And that's why people do live longer, because in UK people do try to keep themselves, they look after themselves.
Yes, keeping physically healthy and active is incredibly important in terms of lifestyle. All the healthy lifestyle choices are absolutely crucial to staying as well as possible, as fit as and active, and engaging in all sorts of social activities as well.
Indeed.
And it doesn't have to be running.
No.
Any form of exercise, they've shown it to be like, I believe, an exponential curve.
Yes.
From nothing to something is up, like a massive shoot up. So me running a marathon, I'm gaining very little in terms of exercise than if I'd walked 5 miles very fast or something like that. So, it sort of plateaus as the more exercise you do, but it's that initial part, which is where most of us are stuck and not doing. And this is what both of us are trying to encourage.
Yes.
But across the ages, I guess.
Yes, and a common reason for older people to end up in hospital is because of falling over. And if you look at people who fall over, a lot of the time, one of the biggest risk factors is poor leg strength. And there are a lot of reasons why that can be, but just doing strengthening exercises in the legs is a very good way of reducing the risk of falling over. Some of it's to do with, there are other problems that can impact on that as well, like vitamin D deficiency and other things that can lead to weak muscles. But certainly exercise is a big part of that.
Indeed. And on that note, let me introduce our listeners as well. So listeners, if you have any questions or queries regarding our topic today, which is care of elderly, so please give us a call on 01582 481822, or you can send your questions, your thoughts, your text messages on 07779 481822. I repeat, 07779 481822. Do share your thoughts. I know we all have elderlies in our family, or we are one of those elderlies, maybe. So if you have any questions or queries, we have lovely expertise in the room. Please use their expertise wisely. So let me ask to both of you, what is the care of elderly? or as people normally call geriatric medicine? Let's start with you, Peter.
Well, I think although we call geriatric medicine a speciality, it's known by a number of different names. Care of the elderly is one of them. I think it's a very general speciality because we deal with all the systems of the body, and what we are trying to do is achieve a holistic approach to people who very often will have a number of medical conditions. And it isn't just the care of the elderly specialist who is involved in the care of this patient. We have to involve all members of the multidisciplinary team, and we have to involve the patient's family and their social setup as well. We have to see who else is helping support this person as they become older and possibly more frail. And we have to take into account all the sort of common conditions that can that people can suffer from as they get older and get more frail. In particular, problems with mobility, problems with their cognition, so people can have memory loss, and people can have problems with falling over, and problems with getting to the toilet in time, problems with continence, and increasingly, people are being prescribed a lot of medication. So we have to think about what we call de-prescribing, trying to take medication away from people, because as people that are have multiple medical problems, medication can produce more side effects than the good that it's doing. We have to be very careful with what we are prescribing for people.
Talib?
Yeah, in my practice, we have elderly patients, but I could have an 80-year-old who looks 60. I could have a 60-year-old who looks 90. Because like children, children develop at different rates. The elderly deteriorate at different rates. And a patient once said to me is, we're all dying. From the day we're born, we're all dying. It's how you live your life in between is what defines your life and what kind of quality of life you have. And some of us have bad luck. We get various illnesses that we didn't ask for, but there's quite a lot of illnesses that we could prevent or delay. So if we all live to 120, we could probably list all the illnesses that we would have, because our bodies will eventually run down and deteriorate. But there are ways of slowing that down. And hopefully we'll touch on some of those as we go along today.
Indeed. Now, Peter, you said that geriatric medicine isn't a specialty, but it's a very common specialty. So what age people can be classed as geriatric patients?
Well, as Talib said, age is really just a number. And we tend to define our speciality by a syndrome that we call frailty. And so what is frailty? And what that means is it's, if you like, the body loses the ability to maintain all the systems functioning as it should. So the body has to control the heart rate, the blood pressure, the blood sugar, the temperature. All of these things have to be kept within a certain parameters. And you can think about various stresses on the system. Exercise is a stress. Being in the cold for a long time is a stress. Having an infection is a stress. Being prescribed medication which disagrees you could be a stress. Having an operation, of course, that would be quite a big stress on the system. And in a sort of healthy, young, fit person, you can deal with that because the body can adjust and it maintains its systems as it should be. But in somebody who's frail and older and has multiple medical problems, heart disease, diabetes, on a lot of medication, it becomes much harder to do that and much harder to adjust and keep those parameters within the bounds that they should be. And so that would be a frailty. And so we have to identify who these frail people are. And it tends to be the people who are less fit, less mobile, less agile, less able to fend for themselves, able to get out and about and do things under their own steam, having difficulty getting around the house, difficulty climbing stairs, things like that. So these are the kind of people who are likely to be frail in terms of their physiological responses.
So I know in the beginning we did talk about physical activities. So what are the best activities for these kind of people? As you guys both see those people quite often, what can they do to keep themselves fit and active?
Probably best place for that question. What we try and encourage in our practice and is just to keep active. Don't just sit in a chair, because your muscles just waste away. I remember when I broke my leg a few years ago, and I couldn't believe how small my muscle in my leg got in just 6 weeks of plaster. So your muscles do decondition. And when your muscles decondition, your balance goes. So you start to be frightened about falling over. So you tend to exercise less, which then makes your muscles even weaker. You're more likely prone to fall. And then you're not eating well because you're not getting to the food, and which then deconditions your immune system, which fights and protects you and builds up defenses. So it just becomes a vicious cycle. And the beauty of frailty in my eyes is I think you can reverse some of it by actually improving your immune system, by eating healthy diet, and then exercise. And exercise doesn't have to be great. It just needs to be small amounts regularly. And I often talk to people, as a phrase that I caught from the physios, but you pace yourself. So don't push yourself so hard so that the next 3 days you're out in bed because you've overworked yourself, but you gradually build it up. So the example I always give is my mother has spinal stenosis. She gets really bad back. She gets sciatica pain. If any of her children, she loves cooking, particularly for her children. So if any of us come, no matter how many times we've told her we've eaten, she'll cook. And she'll take an hour to cook a proper South Indian dish. It takes a long time. And she'll stand.
When am I invited to your mum's house?
She'll stand for an hour and cook. That'll knock her out for 2 days, because her back starts to play up. So slowly but surely she's listened. And that's one of the things I would suggest to the elderly is listen to your children, because it's time for you to listen to your children and not just the other way around all the time. But she now paces herself. So she'll cut her onions and things at a desk, sat down. She'll stand for about 15, 20 minutes, and then she'll sit down, do her stretching exercises, get the muscles moving, and then stand for another 10, 15 minutes and then do it that way. That way she's getting her exercise. She'll walk up and down stairs, and she's reasonably mobile now. And her back's giving her less problem. She's off a lot of the painkillers that she was on, tablets that were there to stop pins and needles, tablets to help her pain in her back. Well, she's off half of those. Every so often it'll flare up. She needs them back again. But she's gone from someone needing long-term tablets, as Peter says, a lot of the elderly do get side effects of the tablets, to someone who's paced herself, still doing a bit of exercise, keeping her back nice and supple, doing the strength work. And we can touch on what types of exercise a bit later. But now she's someone who rarely needs the tablets and still able to cook me food, which is more important.
Definitely, definitely. So will you invite me as well?
One day.
Definitely. So in terms of the elderly person, do an elderly person need a primary care GP physician, or do they need a hospital consultant or a doctor? Peter?
Well, I think first and foremost, they need to have a primary care physician who I've spoken to a lot of primary care physicians, and I think they are all aware of the needs of older, frailer people, and they're aware of the need for a holistic approach and to involve people in the multidisciplinary team, and the need to avoid prescribing too much medication and trying to deprescribe where appropriate. I think that where a geriatrician can be very important is if somebody seems to be deteriorating. So if somebody's normally able to get out and about and get a paper from the paper shop every day, or walk the dog every day, or climb the stairs, get to the toilet in time without any problems at all, and then they're getting a problem. So if they're becoming more confused, if they're not able to walk the distance they were able to walk, if they're becoming more forgetful, if they're having trouble in any of those areas, then that would be when they would need to see a specialist in geriatric medicine to see what it might be, because a lot of the time people who are frailer and older don't present to a hospital in a characteristic way. So if they have a heart problem, they wouldn't necessarily come in with chest pain and shortness of breath. It could be that they come in with a fall or confusion, and so they wouldn't necessarily come in with the standard symptoms when they have an acute medical problem. And sometimes it can be quite difficult to tease apart what is happening. And so that's where the specialist can come in to tease apart all the different medical problems that the individual person can have, because they can have multiple medical problems happening at the same time. And also when they present in this atypical way, working out what it might be that's causing it and underlying it, and almost telling a story in terms of what went wrong, and this A led to B led to C, and that's why they are the way they are.
All right.
And as a GP, what I find really helpful about the speciality is, if I refer to a cardiologist, they'll just look at the heart on the whole. Respiratory will look at the lungs, whereas a geriatrician has to look at everything. And my difficulty is when people start to deteriorate, we try and put the brakes on as quickly and as best as we can. But then we get into the problems where, if I'm looking after their heart, their tablets might upset their kidneys. And if we look after the kidneys, it might upset their heart. And that balance is where the specialists come in, and they can adjust much more finely than we can in general practice. And we may have to say, actually, we have to accept that blood pressure, because treating it too harshly knocks off other things, makes them more likely to fall. So, the message is, we want to try and reduce medicines as much as we can, but don't just stop them.
Yeah.
You need the doctor, you need the medical experts to have a look at it, to say, okay, let's do this gently and let's do it as a planned process rather than just stopping, which unfortunately is what a lot of my patients do. They just think, oh, this tablet's giving me this, and they just stop. And it's one of the things we'll touch on is prevention is still far better than actually getting someone into hospital. If we can prevent them getting into hospital, the better.
And another thing that we have to consider is that when you do have somebody who's deteriorating in the community, it could be that it isn't a physical health problem that has sparked that deterioration. It could be a mental health problem. So it could be somebody who's becoming more depressed, more isolated, not eating and drinking properly, and not looking after themselves. And then that can lead to a number of physical manifestations. And it might be that there isn't actually a physical underlying physical problem. It could be mainly that it's a mental health problem, which is manifesting as a physical disorder. And sometimes they can appear to have a problem with their memory, when it's more that things are just slowing down from a depression point of view rather than because of a memory problem.
Let me introduce our listeners as well at this time. So listeners, if you have any questions or queries regarding our topic tonight, please get in touch with us by giving us a call on 01582 481822, or you can send your text messages on 0779 481822. 0779 481822. We do receive a text message. It says, Islam, my grandparents are in their mid-70s, are currently visiting from Pakistan, and they will be staying with us over the winter. What is the best way we can keep them active while keeping in mind that they aren't used to the climates here? Can they use cane?
Depends what their well-being was like already. You don't want to be pushing them out for a 10-mile walk if they weren't used to that in the first place. But keep them warm, wrap them up. Clothing, layers is better than just having the heating blasting. So put lots of layers on, even indoors, and they can take the layers off as they need to. Because once you get cold, it's really hard to warm up. So do keep them warm, get them moving. And there's loads of things on YouTube and channels. And my mum does yoga, and she's 79. and she'll sit there after her prayers and do the yoga. And I'm sure that's what's helped her back as much as the pacing. And if you just go onto YouTube and look up elderly exercise for the elderly, the standing ones, the sitting ones, there's all sorts of different types, and they pace you through like a little workout for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And these are the sort of things I get my patients to do, because it's really important to keep moving. The other thing I think we were talking before is isolation, and Peter touched on the mental health.
And that's something which we will be talking after the break, inshallah, because we are just about to go for a very quick break. I must say the time has passed really, really quickly. So when we come back from the break, we will talk about the isolation part and definitely how we can look after ourselves. Stay tuned. We will be right back after these short messages.
This program will continue after the break. Continue listening to Inspire FM. Inspire FM.
Inspire 105.1 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Husamuddin Ali, and you are listening to Inspire FM 105.1 FM.
Have you had your flu jab? More people are likely to get flu this winter as it circulates along with COVID-19, putting more lives at risk. If you get flu and COVID-19 at the same time, you're more likely to be seriously ill. Vaccines are our best protection, so to find out if you're eligible, search Flu Vaccines NHS. Need help getting to a vaccination centre? You can book a free Luton taxi to take you there and back. Check the Luton Council website for details. Don't wait. Book your vaccination today and get protected.
Be inspired. Inspire FM.
How many times have you needed urgent medical supplies but don't know where to go? At Harris Pharmacy, we take pride in delivering a high-level healthcare to our community. This is why we have services such as private one-to-one consultation, free prescription ordering from GP and delivery to your home, mobility aids such as providing wheelchairs and many other items for everyday use. Call us today on free phone 0800 458 2850 to discuss your medical needs. We are open from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. Monday to Friday and 9 a.m. till 4 p.m. on Saturdays. Harris Pharmacy, 165 A/B, Dunstable Road, Luton.
Do you feel at times that you just can't cope anymore? Do you find raising a child in today's society challenging? Join me in my parenting show where I aim to discuss these challenges of raising our children, ranging from nurturing sentiment to building the leaders of tomorrow. Every Tuesday evening at 7 p.m. live with Sister Navid on Inspire FM or via our Inspire FM Facebook page. The parenting show at 7 p.m. every Tuesday evening on Inspire FM.
For specialist immigration services, the people to talk to settle a family member in the UK. M&K Solicitors. For all your legal solutions for family, personal injury, clinical negligence, civil and property law, M&K Solicitors. Internationally recognised, M&K Solicitors offer free advice on Friday afternoon in Luton and now Wednesdays in Birmingham too. For local legal services you can rely on, call 01582 732 503 or click on mnksolicitors.com. Your first consultation is free.
Deadly floods in Pakistan have destroyed thousands of homes and have killed over 500 people and left many injured. Families Release Pakistan flood relief teams are on ground in the flood-affected areas and have been rescuing people and providing essential aid including food packs, clean water, and shelters. Please donate generously to help save lives. Call 0114-365-4454 or visit familiesrelief.org.uk.
Richard didn't want to die, but he couldn't stop himself. The collision didn't kill him, but he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, so he hit the inside of the car. That didn't kill him either, but his internal organs carried on travelling until they hit his rib cage, and his lungs were punctured, and the main artery from his heart was torn. And that's what killed Richard.
From the studios of Inspire FM, the time is now 6:30.
Any health advice given, whether general, diet, physical, or spiritual, is general only and must be verified by your doctor. If you need medical advice, please consult a doctor.
Assalamu alaikum and good evening to all our listeners and viewers. Welcome back to the Health and Fitness Show. I'm Fahad Matin, your host for today's evening, and today we are talking about care of elderly with our lovely guest, Dr. Peter Albert from Luton Dunstable Hospital and Dr. Talib Abubacker from Bell House Medical Center. Good evening, sirs. And Assalamu alaikum.
Good evening, wa alaikum.
This program is broadcasting live from the studios of Inspire FM today on 24th of November 2022, and the time just past 6:30. We are presenting from the Inspire FM studios for our lovely people in Luton and all the surrounding areas of Luton, like Dunstable, Harpenden, Bedford, and definitely all our listeners who are listening us on the radio, on the website, on the app, and viewing us on Facebook and YouTube channels. Good evening and welcome back. So before we went on break, we were talking about so many things, and Talib has given a very nice, lovely example about how to look after ourselves. Now, when we talk about looking after ourselves and prevention, we definitely comes back to vaccination as well and medication as well. So let me ask our lovely, pristine guest, as in, what shall we do with the vaccination part?
Peter talked about trying to get people fit and avoid coming into hospital. And prevention is better than cure. So prevention, you could look at preventing illness in itself. So look after your diet, do your exercise. That reduces your risk of getting things like diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease. And think of it like, you know, if this is your line of when something's going to go wrong, you can push that line back by doing the correct things. And you've talked about it many times about not smoking, eating healthy, exercise, and we touched on that, some of those already. But then there's also prevention when you've got chronic diseases, heart disease, diabetes, COPD or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, renal disease, old age. Well, you know, what sort of things are you seeing in hospital at the moment, Peter?
Well, we're seeing a lot of infections at this time of year, a lot of pneumonias and infectious exacerbations of COPD, airways disease, asthma.
Yeah. And some of these are preventable by vaccination. And time after time, research has shown that's why they do it every year. They spend millions on vaccinations. Yet in Luton, our uptake is very low, both for flu vaccination and obviously the last two years, the COVID vaccinations. They're getting free COVID boosters, and the evidence is so strong about reducing. Everyone seems to be a bit blasé about it now because the rules, it's not on TV every day, but we're still seeing COVID, I think.
Yes, there's still COVID coming in. Yes.
Yeah, we're seeing it amongst staff, and they're going to pass it on to our elderly. And as Peter says, our elderly are already running at maximum. Their immune system and their body systems are trying to work really hard to keep everything at bay. The last thing they want is an infection on top, because we talked about it before. Your immune system's like an army. It doesn't want to be distracted fighting other things that could have been prevented. So it's been disappointing. Actually, we've had quite a few people come through with flu vaccines and COVID, but you can't. It's so easy now. You can just go onto 119. It'll tell you where the nearest places that are doing your vaccines. Most practices are doing vaccines. A lot of pharmacists are doing vaccines. So you will find somewhere that will offer you a vaccine without too much difficulty. So I would strongly advise people to get their flu vaccines done, their COVID boosters done. And if you haven't over 65 or in any of the risk groups that we mentioned before, get your pneumonia vaccines done. Because these are the things that we're seeing going into hospital.
Shingles as well?
Shingles for 70 to 80-year-olds, I think. I'm not an expert on that, but I think, so again, I think there was a program not so long ago about shingles. So people are missing out on this. There's other parts of the world where they're crying out for these things. We've got it free, and people aren't taking it up because they're listening to various bits of social media of people without the expertise. You know, I'm not going to ask my neighbor who's a teacher about changing my boiler. I'm going to ask an expert, and I might ask 2 or 3. Well, various colleges have all come up with the same answer, and not just in this country, but across the world. So we're very fortunate that we have access to these vaccines readily and free, yet people aren't taking it. And I don't understand why.
And I must say there must be same kind of a reasons where people do end up in hospital because they might not take the necessary precautions. As you said, prevention is better than cure. So Peter, what are the common reasons you see people from old age end up in hospital, where, and how should they be treated? Or
well, they often present as with a fall or with some confusion, but the cause could be a heart attack, a heart arrhythmia. The commonest one would be something like atrial fibrillation, where the heart is going very fast and irregularly. They can come in with infections, as we've mentioned, pneumonia, urine infections, but some unusual infections as well. So infections of the back, of the bones in the back and the discs in the back, or infections like a meningitis. It is unusual, but we have seen it, and also diverticulitis, which is an infection of outpouching of the colon. Strokes, unfortunately, are quite common as well. We see quite a number of strokes coming in every week, and these days sometimes we are able to give clot busting treatment, so thrombolysis it's called, to try and get rid of the clot and allow people to recover more quickly from the stroke, and to a better functional outcome after the stroke. But that does depend on getting to the hospital very, very soon after the first symptoms develop. And of course, heart attacks. We still see quite a number of people coming in with heart attacks these days. At Luton, we do tend to get people quite quickly into the catheter lab in order to have their coronary arteries looked at, and if there's a narrowing, they can open it up with a balloon and put stents in. And so we do have the whole range of services at Luton, and obviously we try and get people seen as quickly as possible at the front door. Try and get a consultant review as soon as the patient, as soon as we can, from when the patient first arrives, and get them to the right ward on the right treatment.
Indeed, definitely, and that's one of the main reasons of sometimes when patients do get well, they normally try to leave the hospital as soon as possible as well.
Yes, I mean, obviously, sometimes we have to encourage people to stay, but to complete the treatment. But yes, we do. Obviously, the sooner we can get the treatment in, the sooner we can get the patient better and home.
And the good news is, some of these, when they've got chronic disease, if they take their medication correctly, if they go to their follow-ups, if we can monitor their blood pressure, if we can get their blood test done so we know what their cholesterol's doing, or in diabetes, their glycosylated hemoglobin, which gives us an average of what their sugar's doing over the last 3 months or so. If people do those things, then we can actually try and prevent another episode happening or worsening of that condition. So it's important when you get invited for your review, both in primary care, where we look after these things at least on a yearly basis, if not twice yearly. And most practices will write to their patients or text them to come for their annual reviews. And in hospital cases for outpatients, we're still surprised how many people miss their appointments. And the whole idea is that it's a bit like your MOT of your car. You're trying to find problems before you actually have your crash. So Peter will agree with me, I'm sure, you'd rather see them before the crash than after the crash, as we're seeing them. And there's enough things out there that we can do to prevent. You know, no apologies for sounding like a parrot, but eat healthy, exercise, sleep well, look after your mental well-being. And if you've got chronic diseases and you're over 65 or over 65, get your vaccinations done and go to your checkups, as most practices will call you up for them. But the DNA rates that did not attend are still quite high.
And another thing that we do see coming in to A&E are cancer-related problems. So either people who didn't know that they had cancer and they come in with symptoms, and we do a number of tests, sometimes scans, and it just shows, unfortunately, they have a cancer, and that just presents to A&E as a new problem. Other problems that we see associated with cancer are the side effects of treatment. So people with infections, because the chemotherapy can make the immune system less good than it should be, or people who've had radiotherapy who develop problems from that. But yes, I think it's worth mentioning various cancer-related problems that we see coming into hospital as acute medical problems.
Again, you've done loads of programs, or all three of you who run this show, about recognizing the symptoms of what cancers are, recognizing the symptoms that you need to look out for: bowel cancer, prostate. I think you've done a program on screening, for example. Again, the uptake in Luton is poor. It's improving, but it's poor. And we as general practitioners are pushing the agenda and writing to people. But people need to take these offers up in terms of breast screening, bowel screening. We did a lung health one not so long ago, and that we picked up some really good early cancers which we could treat.
Low dose CT scans.
Yeah, so so there's lots of good things going out there. I think people need to just get over their fear and not put their heads in the sands, thinking that it'll be okay. We'll catch things early if we can, and that will keep you out of hospital or reduce the risk. And that's all we can keep pushing, really.
In the beginning, I did ask about the geriatric medicine. I completely forgot to ask. So, if the geriatric medicine is about frailty, so the palliative care is on the edge of the frailty lines as well. So, will they be classed in the same lines?
Well, I think they are different in the sense that what we're trying to do in geriatric medicine in care of the elderly is optimize the functional ability of the individual, and also make them the center of the care that they receive, and as independent as possible, and maintain their independence for as long as possible. Whereas I think palliative medicine is usually when somebody has a terminal diagnosis. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are in the final stages of that terminal diagnosis. They might have several months to live, but where the focus isn't about trying to stop that disease process. The focus is very much on trying to optimize their symptoms. So if they're getting pain, if they're getting sickness, if they're getting short of breath, if they're getting nausea, or if they're feeling sick, all of those symptoms that we can address with medication, we would try and get those symptoms under control, so that whatever the underlying disease process, whether it's cancer or whether it's heart failure or whether it's a neurological disorder, such as Parkinson's disease, that at least they're having their symptoms addressed, and they're not going to be in distress towards the end of their life.
And I know, Talib, you were explaining about a very good example of one of your patients during the break, who you helped with the.
My mind's gone blank. Which one was it again?
Where you have guided the patient towards the tea party garden.
Oh, okay, yes, I remember now. And it touches on everything we've touched, and I think Peter mentioned it about the mental well-being as well. you know, you can have two people with the exact same condition, yet one does so much better than the other. And when they've done research on it, the sort of things that make people do better than others is one is family support. They're often married. They don't drink much. They eat healthy. They exercise. Okay, but they also have purpose. They have purpose in their life. They look forward to doing things. So the example I gave you during the break was one of my patients who had prostatic cancer, and he was given months because it was spread into his bones and things, and he was isolated at home. He didn't want to do much, and myself and my wife had gone to Luton Hoo for afternoon tea, and I just happened to see him, and I told him, "Oh, it's amazing because you've got this fancy hotel, and you can feel like a king, and you go there, and people serve you tea, and it's just beautiful grounds, and it was lovely." And I said to him, "Look, you're sat here feeling you can't do much. You may as well sit in a grand place and have afternoon tea and get people to serve you." And he went. And I also told him to take some photos so he and his wife could talk through the photos and about his past history, and he could write a little story about the photos, about what he was doing, who was with him. So the idea was to have a little story that he could relive, because when you talk through your photos, you almost relive that moment. And also to make a little album so that he could pass it on to his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. So he went and he did it, and he absolutely loved it. It gave him some purpose. He looked at the photos. He felt beautiful grounds in Luton Hoo. If no one's been, it's really lovely place to go. A little bit expensive, but hey ho. But he went every month, and he loved it so much. He decided to go to the Ritz, and then for his 80th birthday, I think the family took him out to New York or something, and had afternoon tea in one of the fancy hotels, the Waldorf or something, and afternoon tea there. And he survived 7 years, having been given months. And the reason he survived was because he had purpose. He could see that there was some purpose to his life. And one of the things we touch on is loneliness. I think, you know, I was surprised when Peter said it because he's in hospital, but he sees it amongst his patients, is loneliness. And I see it with patients who've got family around them and still lonely. How does that work? It's because we're busy working, tapping on our computers, social media, watching television. Our children are doing their homeworks and that, and our poor elderly family members are sat in a corner, maybe not being able to hear properly, so people don't spend time talking to them, and they just decondition. And it's really important that we involve them in everything. We involve them in decisions. And if they live on their own, who's contacted them? You know, what are you talking about? Is it just a quick hello, how are you? Is there anything I can do for you? Is any shopping? No, yeah, everything's fine here, full stop. And that's like a 5-minute phone call. Well, what are they going to do for the rest of the 23 hours and 55 minutes? You know, so it's really important that we get them involved, and there's lots of charity. If you can't do it, you know, I'm fortunate we're in part of a big family, so I can look after my parents. My dad passed away a few years ago, but we can look after them because we can share that load. But some people don't have that luxury of having to be able to share that load. But there's lots of charities out there that can get them involved, you know, activities that can. We've got a couple of people, and I'm sure they don't mind me mentioning him in Parkrun. There's someone called Frank. I think he's in his 80s, and he's got a corner called Frank's Corner, and all he does is stands there pointing people. Everyone knows Frank, and if he's not there, people ask, "Where is Frank?" It's given him some purpose. Pete's Corner. He's in his 70s, and he does the same thing. And there's a couple of others. There's Jeff and Reg, all in their 70s and 80s, who come to Parkrun. And the beauty for them is it's a social event. There's walking involved. They don't need to run. They can walk if they want to, or they can volunteer. And the beauty for them is, you know, at that age, all their friends are dying or ill. They can't see them, but they're mixing with different age groups, and people are talking about positive things about their running time or how they improved or what they're going to do next time. And it's not about bombs and wars and, you know, what the economy is doing and what your interest rates are. It's all positive stuff on a Saturday, and they love it. They like looking forward to it. And there's lots of other things. It doesn't have to be parkrun. There's other things that people can get involved with. Luton Wellbeing, for example, run lots of classes, exercise on prescription, for example, for anyone with chronic disease. We can refer them to have a discounted 6 weeks or 7 weeks at the gym, and they'll get trainers to show them particular exercises they can do. And then they do social things as well. So there are lots out there, but you've got to see that person and then sort of think, actually, they are getting depressed perhaps, and it's not just about what tablets they need adjusting. Maybe they just need someone to talk to or have some purpose and socialization.
Indeed.
And I think there are a lot of educational activities as well, so that older people can go to talks and they can keep their mind active, as well as obviously meeting other people. And
absolutely. I mean, I didn't realize, but something called the University of Third Age.
Yes, exactly. Yes,
there's over 700 members in Luton.
Yes,
University of Third Age.
Yeah, so it's just basically it's run by volunteers, but I don't know if you refer them.
I haven't been to any sessions, but from what I gather, you can sign up to a series of talks, and you can actually do you can do a degree. I think
there's talks. There's they do tours, they go to the cinema, they go to shows, they do things like croquet, knitting, badminton, board games. You've got to be 55, Peter. I don't think you're quite there, but I'm nearly there, so I can join. But it's 55 plus, and these are these are some of the things that are out there. We just need to know where to look for them. Most practices now, because of PCNs, have got something called a social prescriber. And they are aware of what's around in your local area, what people can go to. So if you find you're struggling because you're not socializing, then speak to your practice, who'll get in touch with their social prescriber, who will then be able to tell you what's available. From gardening to playing board games, so it doesn't have to be very physical, although we do try and encourage physical.
Now, from this positive note, I'm just taking you guys to a very dull note, because I have just literally have very less time remaining before the end of the show. In fact, just 4 minutes. I just want to ask about the importance of DNAR. Why do we need it, and when do we need it?
Well, I think the issue of do not resuscitate, do not attempt resuscitation forms is unnecessarily controversial. I think people have different ideas about what resuscitation involves, and a lot of it comes from the movies and these medical series that you see on television. And people will see there'll be a scene where somebody has an electric shock put across their heart, and then they'll suddenly sit up and they'll be back, talking and be sort of right as rain. Unfortunately, it isn't like that. It's not a sort of miracle cure. It's a very brutal and quite aggressive exercise, and it's you really would not want to see a loved one going through that unless there was a very good chance that they get back to their normal self again. So it isn't just the possibility of having electric shocks put across the heart. It's also putting tubes into the windpipe, attaching the patient to a ventilator, putting large needles into the veins of the neck, pressing very hard on the sternum, on the breastbone, in a way that will often cause rib fractures. It's a very brutal thing to do, and we should only be doing this for people where we think that they'll actually get better and get back to their normal selves. Even in younger patients who are quite fit, who are extremely ill, and they survive a resuscitation attempt, they can have brain damage as a result of not getting oxygen to their brain for a period of time. So what we would tend to say is, if somebody is quite frail and elderly, it wouldn't really be fair. If they were, obviously we're trying to treat them, we're trying to get them better, we're trying to get them home, but sometimes things deteriorate, and we simply can't get them better. And if things were to deteriorate in such a way that their heart stopped beating or they stopped breathing, it wouldn't be the right thing for somebody who is very frail and elderly to attempt a resuscitation, because it is, as I say, a very brutal thing to do.
Painful process. And on that note, I must say, wow, the time has passed really, really quickly. We just have a minute before the end of the show. quick messages from both of you. Let's start with you, Peter.
I think the theme has been just keep as healthy as you can, healthy lifestyle, keep active, both mentally and physically and socially, and just try and participate in whatever you can do.
Indeed. Talib?
Vaccinate is really important. Exercise, diet, mental well-being, and look after your parents.
Indeed.
Because your children will learn from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't look after your parents, fat chance your children are going to look after you.
Amen to that. Amen to that. I will absolutely agree on that. 200%. I've seen a living example, and definitely on that. On that positive note, I must say thank you so much to both of you.
Thank you
for coming to the studio. And definitely we want to do a similar session like that again in the future, if you both agree.
With pleasure.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to our listeners as well who join us and listen to us. We will be back again next week with a different topic. Keep listening, Inspire FM. I'm signing out saying Assalamu alaikum.